Before we begin, I have to mention that I tried my best to avoid spoiling the story, but still, proceed with caution. Before starting a game, I have a habit of checking howlongtobeat.com to have some kind of rough idea of how much time I would need to beat a game. Not that it mattered much since I do most of the side content with Yakuza games anyways, and I saw that this game is a lot shorter than the mainline games, adding up to only 5 chapters. So I felt it appropriate to split this video into 5 chapters as well. Having played each of the mainline games and both Judgment games, my expectation for the overall experience of the game was pretty basic. Filling in some holes to make the jump between 6th and 7th game make more sense, running around the same town for the 5th time, singing Bakamitai for the 97th time until I get it as close as possible to perfection, which is a lie since I aced the song on the first try, but the desire to perfect it was still there. Basically, what I imagined was a normal Yakuza experience with recurring characters to invoke some sort of nostalgia towards mainline games for short bursts of excitement and happiness. Little did I know that this basic ass game will inspire me to make my first ever YouTube video. Mediocre expectations I have bestowed upon myself proved to be realistic. Well, sort of. Combat is as brutal and satisfying, but at the same time as clunky as I've remembered. Right as you step into the game, it unveils a brand new combat stance called Agent. Using different gadgets such as drones, jet-powered shoes, a wire and cigarette bombs, our protagonist skillfully attempts to hide his dragon-shaped soul. But to be frank, this stance felt very underwhelming and weak. More on that later. Upon rediscovering Yakuza stance, the dragon bares his fangs and brings more explosive action into the mix. Side content felt thrown in just to earn 2 available currencies that you use to buy items and upgrade abilities. Gaiden has mini-games cherry-picked from other Yakuza games like karaoke, mahjong, golf, you name it. The chapters are stupid short, and I'll show you how long it took me to beat the game.
Huh? Huh?
So, remind me, why am I playing this game again? Kazuma Kiryu is the pinnacle of a game protagonist, and the exposure to his presence is the sole reason why you need to play this game. If you haven't played all the games up to this point, there is a chance that every action of his, word, decision won't hit you as hard as it hit me. Nevertheless, I have no doubt he will inspire you in some ways. In the face of a cruel, corrupted, and twisted world full of hardships and betrayal stood a man with unshakable ideals, even when faced with hardest of decisions. The deceased dragon of Dojima tightly holds onto his new alter ego Joryu and never abandons it, at least not through his words. In actions, he's still very much the same dragon we all grew to love, selfless and unwavering. Money and power mean nothing to him. He stayed loyal to the only woman he ever loved who died a long time ago. His saint-like qualities stained only by the circumstances he grew up with that paradoxically made him the man he is today. If these words of mine did not convince you I like the guy, wait until I tell you how I almost became him. As I was on my routine stroll along the streets of Sotenbori, I got stopped by some random low-life Yakuzas, and while fighting them, I switched to the same agent stance that I dislike and I fought them. I did not necessarily enjoy using the aforementioned stance since I thought the Yakuza stance was more powerful and more fun. But for a second I thought to myself, would Joryu really reveal his true colors to some street nobodies? And before I knew it, I started internalizing the ideals of the legendary Yakuza. I proceeded to make decisions that didn't necessarily make the game more fun, per se, but instead, feeling more right. I knew he would help regular citizens with the most trivial things. I knew he would defend homeless people and fend off any attackers. Despite denouncing Yakuza lifestyle, there was still a sense of Yakuza pride within Kiryu, which I then externalized by using Yakuza stance when facing off strong enemies, as if to acknowledge them, or those that insulted the Yakuza name, as if to take their pigeon wings away. Dreading the possibility of never seeing the Dragon of Dojima again, I wanted to see him off properly and make every second count. Enter Colosseum, the Ring of the Champions. Despite being side content, completing this was a must for me. As new generations of Yakuza discarded my troubled past and how I rose to become the Dragon of Dojima while claiming I was born elite and undeserving of the name, Colosseum was more than a great way to prove myself. It took a lot of 1v1 fighting and grinding to make hundreds of millions of yen just to make a solid team to challenge the kings of Colosseum. The fights were brutal, and after a lot of trial and error, I finally led the team to a victory. Despite my alter ego wanting to stay incognito, the real me wanted to challenge the so-called strongest man in the world. Ultimately, a Hmong clan approached me, and fighting their strongest member lasted an eternity, felt like the time Peter Griffin fought the rooster. Triumphant, proving myself once again, I returned to my mission to end the Yakuza life. Along with like-minded allies, I put an end to a lifestyle that resulted in a nationwide fear and misery, and also placed hope into a new rising sun. The time for rest has finally come. Finally, I snapped out of it. I'm not Kiryu Kazuma. I went back to being a bystander. As the memories of the past decade flash in Kiryu's eyes, sadness overwhelms me. I was there for the journey, and the boy did it take me for a ride. Holding a controller in my hands, I'm speechless. I've never felt this way towards a game ending. As life became more hectic, games turned into items on a list to cross off. A hobby I once cherished as a child felt like a chore these past years. All I could think of is that I'm glad I documented this one. It won't become a blur so soon. I will have these words to fall back upon when my memory fails me. The game itself, and by itself, could never invoke such feelings inside of me, but as a culmination of Dragon of Dojima's life, it will be the one I will always remember.